Today's video will be something a little bit different because it'll actually be a call for action for you guys. I am in the search for the perfect cornbread recipe, and so far I haven't had much luck. So I'm hoping that you guys who are watching, especially those of you who I know from the South, from South Carolina, maybe you have the perfect cornbread recipe that I'm not aware of, because especially now when I haven't been able to be back in the US for over a year, I am really craving some US dishes, especially those ones that are really more of like comfort foods to me and that really bring me back to those memories in the US. I've been trying to figure out those types of recipes and how to make them at home. Usually when I'm setting out to make some US dishes, my go-to cookbook is this one here. This one has really great recipes, and they're usually more like the traditional type of recipes, and they're the ones that usually have tasted like what I'm looking for. But this one, I actually tried out the cornbread recipe in this book and I wasn't impressed. It wasn't as sweet and it wasn't as moist as I would like. I think the best cornbread I've ever had was actually in Savannah, Georgia. My mom and I were visiting there and we were eating in a restaurant that was right on the river. I don't remember the name of the restaurant, but the cornbread there was just so moist, so flavorful, the right amount of sweetness without being too sweet, because that's important. And the problem with this recipe when I tried it out was that it wasn't sweet at all. There is sugar in the recipe, but you couldn't really taste it much. And to me, cornbread needs to have just that little bit of sweetness baked in. What I did now was I found this recipe online that sounds really promising. And the reason it sounds promising is that one, the woman who writes the food blog was describing that she's not a huge fan of cornbread, but she fell in love with this recipe. And it has not only brown sugar in the recipe, but it also calls for honey. So I think that with the honey and with the brown sugar, we will hopefully end up with a little bit of sweetness. The other difference is that the recipe that was in this book used milk, where this recipe calls for buttermilk. And when I was doing some research on cornbread, a lot of them called out for buttermilk, and the ones that didn't were kind of saying, oh, in case you don't have buttermilk, this recipe is great. But I don't want the, in case you don't have an ingredient, I want the real thing. So somehow it sounded that buttermilk was the thing to use. The other tip that I found was to use a cast iron pan. So to heat it up in the oven and melt some butter in it before you put the batter in. So then you end up with the nice, like crispy edges on the cornbread, and hopefully then the rest will remain nice and moist. So I'm gonna try this recipe that I found online. If you have a recipe for delicious Southern style cornbread, let me know. I'm so anxious to find cornbread that brings me back to Savannah, to the riverside, where my mom and I had just the most amazing cornbread. So let's get this one done. Let's see if it's any better than the one I had in this book. And who knows, maybe then this one is the recipe that I was after all along. So let's do this. amazing. The edges are nice and crispy and it looks nice and golden brown on top. Now just for the agonizing part of waiting for this thing to cool down enough that I can cut into it and have a taste test. So now we wait. I will check back up with you once we can cut into it. It is out of the pan and it's looking amazing. Take a look. Nice and crispy looking edges. And yes, it's a little bit thin, but I don't think that's an issue. Actually, the cornbread I had in Savannah was also quite thin. So my hopes are way up for this taste test. Let's cut into it. So there you have it. You can see that it's still hot because you can see the steam coming out, but it looks amazing. Check out the consistency. It's nice and soft. So excited. Let's give this a taste. That's more like it. So much better than the first attempt with my recipe book. This one is a lot sweeter, but like I said, not too sweet because it shouldn't be like a dessert or cake or anything like that. But oh, this is so, so good. But do you have a better recipe that I should try out? Let me know. This one is definitely a winner. So if you want to give this one a try yourself, I'll link the original recipe below because it's from another blog that's online. Anybody can find it. So I thought this was perfect. A lot of my content recently has been very Finland related. A lot of it has been Swiss related. And now I got a little taste of America into my channel as well again. And I think you'll see that kind of content coming more and more as my travel fever and homesickness for the States continues to grow. Who knows when I'll be able to travel there next. Here's hoping. And until next time, guys, see you back on the channel. Bye.